Are you making these mistakes without even realizing it? Stay until the end of this video and drop a comment telling me which habit hit home the most, because what I'm about to reveal might completely change how you see yourself and others. We all know someone who seems to constantly make poor decisions, struggles with simple concepts, or just can't seem to get ahead in life. But here's the truth that psychology reveals. Intelligence isn't just about IQ scores or academic achievement. It shows up in our daily habits, our choices, and how we navigate everyday life. Today, I'm breaking down the daily habits that psychological research has linked to lower cognitive functioning. And before you judge, remember we all have some of these habits. The key is recognizing them and making changes. So let's dive into the first habit. Number one, consuming information without any critical thinking. This is massive. And in today's world of social media, it's more common than ever. People with lower cognitive abilities tend to accept information at face value without questioning it. They see a headline, they believe it. They watch a video, they assume it's true. They hear someone say something with confidence, and they take it as fact. They don't ask questions like, is this source reliable? What's the evidence for this? Could there be another perspective? Who benefits from me believing this? This is why misinformation spreads so quickly. People scroll through their feeds, see something that confirms what they already believe or sounds interesting, and they share it immediately without fact checking, without reading beyond the headline, without considering whether it's actually true. And here's the thing, this isn't just about being gullible. It's about a lack of intellectual curiosity and critical thinking skills. Smart people question things, they dig deeper. They look for multiple sources, they understand that things are rarely black and white. If you find yourself believing everything you see online, if you never fact check anything, if you share posts without reading them fully, this is a red flag. Your brain is operating on autopilot instead of actively processing information. The second habit, avoiding challenging mental tasks. This one is subtle but incredibly revealing. People with lower intelligence tend to gravitate toward the path of least mental resistance. They avoid anything that makes their brain work hard. They choose easy entertainment over stimulating content. They prefer mindless scrolling over reading. They avoid puzzles, complex problems, or anything that requires deep thinking. Think about it. When was the last time you deliberately chose to do something mentally challenging just for the sake of growth? Did you pick up a difficult book? Did you try to learn a new skill? Did you engage with complex ideas? People with higher intelligence actually enjoy the challenge. They seek out difficult problems because solving them feels rewarding. They read complex material because it expands their thinking. They learn new things because growth excites them. But people with lower cognitive function see mental effort as something to be avoided. Why should I read this long article when I can watch a 30-second video? Why should I try to understand this complex topic when someone can just give me the simple answer? Why should I challenge myself when I can just coast? And here's the problem, your brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. When you constantly choose the easy path, when you avoid mental challenges, your cognitive abilities actually decline. You're not staying the same, you're getting worse. If you find yourself always choosing the easiest option, always avoiding things that require thought, always looking for shortcuts, your brain is atrophying. Number three, having zero intellectual curiosity. This ties into the previous point, but goes deeper. People with lower intelligence rarely ask why or how about anything. They accept the world as it is without questioning or wondering about it. They're not curious about how things work, why things happen, or what's beyond their immediate experience. Think about the conversations you have. Do you ever wonder about bigger questions? Do you ask why society works the way it does? Do you wonder about history, science, or philosophy? Do you question your own beliefs and assumptions? People with higher intelligence are naturally curious. They want to understand everything. They ask questions constantly. They're fascinated by how things work, why people behave certain ways, what causes different phenomena. Their minds are always active, always exploring, but people with lower cognitive ability rarely display this curiosity. They don't wonder about anything beyond their immediate needs. They're not interested in learning new things unless it directly benefits them right now. They never ask deep questions about life, existence, or the world around them. And this creates a terrible cycle. Without curiosity, you don't learn. Without learning, you don't grow. Without growth, you stay stuck at the same level or decline. If you never find yourself wondering about things, if you're not curious about the world, if you never ask questions just for the sake of understanding, this is a significant indicator. Number 4, refusing to admit when you're wrong. This is huge, and it's one of the clearest signs of lower intelligence. Smart people understand that being wrong is part of learning. They can say, I was mistaken, or I didn't know that. Thanks for correcting me, without their ego getting crushed. They see being corrected as an opportunity to improve their understanding. But people with lower cognitive abilities often can't do this. When confronted with evidence that they're wrong, they double down. They make excuses. They get defensive. They attack the person correcting them rather than examining the facts. Why? Because they tie their self-worth to being right. They see admitting a mistake as admitting they're stupid. So they'd rather maintain a false belief than face the temporary discomfort of being wrong. This shows up in arguments where someone keeps insisting on their point even when presented with clear evidence against it. It shows up in people who never apologize or acknowledge their mistakes. It shows up in those who blame everyone else when things go wrong. Smart people have intellectual humility. They know they don't know everything. They're comfortable saying, I don't know, or I was wrong about that. This actually makes them smarter because they're constantly updating their understanding based on new information. If you find yourself getting defensive whenever someone corrects you, if you can never admit you made a mistake, if you always need to be right, this reveals a fragile ego and limited cognitive flexibility. Number 5, making impulsive decisions without thinking about consequences. This is about poor executive function and lack of foresight. People with lower intelligence tend to be extremely impulsive. They want something, they get it immediately without considering future consequences. They feel something, they act on it without thinking it through. They make decisions based on immediate gratification rather than long-term benefit. This shows up everywhere. Spending money they don't have on things they don't need. Making major life decisions without any planning. Saying things without considering how they'll be received. Eating whatever they want without thinking about health consequences. Quitting jobs on impulse without having another lined up. Smart people think several steps ahead. They consider, if I do this, what will happen? What are the possible outcomes? What could go wrong? Is this worth the risk? What's the long-term impact? But people with lower cognitive abilities struggle with this kind of forward thinking. They live entirely in the present moment, reacting to immediate desires and impulses without any consideration for tomorrow. And then they wonder why their life is chaotic, why they're always in crisis, why they can't get ahead. It's because they never plan, never think ahead, never consider consequences. If you constantly make impulsive decisions, if you always act without thinking, if you regularly face negative consequences that you didn't see coming, this indicates poor cognitive planning abilities. Number 6, having extremely poor emotional regulation. Now, this might surprise some people, but emotional intelligence is closely linked to overall intelligence. People with lower cognitive abilities often struggle to manage their emotions. They fly off the handle over small things. They can't control their anger, anxiety, or sadness. They let their emotions dictate their behavior without any filter. This isn't about occasionally getting upset or having bad days. Everyone experiences that. This is about a consistent inability to regulate emotional responses appropriately. Smart people can feel strong emotions but still choose how to respond. They can be angry but not lash out. They can be sad but still function. They can be anxious but still think rationally. They have the cognitive capacity to pause between feeling and reacting. But people with lower intelligence often lack this pause. They feel something and they immediately react. Someone says something they don't like, they explode. Something doesn't go their way, they have a meltdown. They're stressed, so they take it out on everyone around them. This shows up in relationships constantly. People who can't have a disagreement without screaming. People who give the silent treatment instead of communicating. People who make threats when they're upset. People who can't calm themselves down without external help. If you find yourself constantly overwhelmed by your emotions, if you regularly say or do things in emotional moments that you later, if people describe you as reactive or volatile, this suggests limited cognitive control. Number 7, never reading anything substantial. This is straightforward but incredibly important. People with lower intelligence rarely, if ever, read books. They don't read articles beyond headlines. They don't engage with long-form content. They avoid anything that requires sustained attention and comprehension. And I'm not talking about occasionally watching videos instead of reading. I'm talking about people who haven't read a single book in years, who can't remember the last time they'd read anything longer than a social media post, who actively avoid reading whenever possible. Reading is one of the most important activities for cognitive development and maintenance. It expands vocabulary, improves focus, enhances empathy, builds knowledge, and strengthens critical thinking skills. But people who never read are essentially starving their brains. They're limiting their vocabulary, reducing their attention span, narrowing their perspective, and stunting their intellectual growth. Smart people read regularly. They read different genres. They read challenging material. They read to learn, to understand, to grow. They recognize that reading is one of the fastest ways to gain knowledge and insight. If you never read anything substantial, if you can't remember the last book you finished, if you rely entirely on videos and social media for information, you're limiting your cognitive potential dramatically. Number 8, surrounding yourself only with people who think exactly like you. This reveals intellectual insecurity and closed-mindedness. People with lower intelligence can't handle differing viewpoints. They surround themselves with people who agree with everything they say, who share all their opinions, who never challenge them. This creates an echo chamber where their ideas are never tested, their beliefs are never questioned, and their thinking never evolves. They start to believe that their perspective is the only correct one because everyone around them agrees. Smart people deliberately seek out diverse perspectives. They befriend people with different backgrounds, beliefs, and opinions. They engage with ideas that challenge them. They don't need everyone to agree with them because they're confident enough in their thinking to consider alternatives. But people with lower cognitive abilities feel threatened by different viewpoints. They see disagreement as attack. They can't separate ideas from identity. So they create little bubbles where everyone thinks the same way, talks the same way, and believes the same things. And then they wonder why they can't understand people different from them, why they struggle in diverse environments, why their thinking never grows. If you only have friends who agree with you on everything, if you can't have conversations with people who see things differently, if you cut people off for having different opinions, this shows intellectual rigidity. Number 9, blaming external factors for everything. This is about lacking personal ability and self-awareness. People with lower intelligence have an external locus of control. Everything that happens to them is someone else's fault. They're never responsible for their circumstances. It's always the system, other people, bad luck, or unfair treatment. They failed the test? The teacher didn't like them. They got fired? The boss was unreasonable. They're broke? The economy is rigged. Their relationships failed? Everyone else is crazy. There's never any self-reflection, never any, what could I have done differently? Never any ownership of their choices and actions. Smart people have an internal locus of control. They understand that while external factors exist, they still have agency over how they respond and what choices they make. They ask themselves what they could have done better, what they can learn, how they can improve. They don't see themselves as helpless victims of circumstance. They see themselves as active participants in their own lives who can make changes and improvements. But people with lower cognitive abilities lack this self-awareness. They can't recognize their own patterns, can't see how their choices contribute to their outcomes, can't take responsibility for their lives. If you always blame others, if you never think you could have done anything differently, if you see yourself as a victim of everything, this reveals limited self-awareness and cognitive insight. Number 10, having no long-term goals or plans. This final habit is about future orientation and planning ability. People with lower intelligence tend to live day to day with no real vision for their future. They have no goals beyond immediate survival or pleasure. They don't plan, don't strategize, don't work toward anything meaningful. Ask them where they see themselves in 5 years, and they have no answer. Ask them what they're working toward, and they shrug. Ask them about their dreams, and they either have none or have given up on them entirely. Smart people think long term. They have goals, they have plans, they're working toward something. They delay gratification today because they're building towards something better tomorrow. They understand that life isn't just about getting through today. It's about creating the future you want. And that requires planning, discipline, and sustained effort toward meaningful objectives. But people with lower cognitive abilities struggle with this kind of abstract, future-oriented thinking. They can't imagine a different future. They can't create plans. They can't sustain effort toward distant goals. So they just drift through life reacting to whatever happens. If you have no goals beyond today, if you never plan for the future, if you're just drifting without direction, this suggests limited capacity for abstract thinking and long-term planning. So those are the 10 daily habits that psychological research has linked to lower intelligence. But the most important thing to understand, having some of these habits doesn't mean you're unintelligent. Intelligence is complex, multifaceted, and can be developed. The real question is, now that you know these habits, what are you going to do about them? Are you going to get defensive and make excuses? Or are you going to honestly assess yourself and make changes? Smart people would choose the latter. They'd see this as an opportunity to grow, to improve, to develop better habits that enhance their cognitive abilities. Because here's the truth, your brain is plastic. It can change. You can develop better habits. You can become more intelligent through deliberate practice and better choices. Start questioning what you read. Challenge yourself mentally every day. Cultivate curiosity. Admit when you're wrong. Think before you act. Manage your emotions. Read regularly. Seek diverse perspectives. Take responsibility. Set goals. These aren't just habits of intelligent people. These are habits that make people more intelligent. So if this video resonated with you, hit that like button and comment below telling me which habit you're going to work on first. And if you want more psychology-based content that helps you understand yourself and others better, make sure you're subscribed.